All right, let's talk about something that should be on every fintech board's radar right now. There's this gap that regulators are zeroing in on, and honestly, it could put your entire license to operate at risk. So, we're going to break down exactly what's going on, and more importantly, what you need to do about it, like, today.
And this quote, man, it just says it all, doesn't it? It's not a question of if regulators will come knocking anymore. The question is, when they do, will your house be in order? Because they are coming. The whole game has shifted. And frankly, being prepared isn't just an option, it's everything.
So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the new regulatory reality. Then, we'll define this governance gap I mentioned. After that, a little pop quiz, see if your board passes. Then we'll get into the good stuff, building bulletproof accountability. And we'll wrap it all up with a 90-day action plan you can actually use.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the new regulatory reality. And this is all about why this is so incredibly urgent for every single fintech out there. The old move fast and break things motto, yeah, that's dead and buried when it comes to governance.
You've got this perfect storm of three major pressures converging all at once. First, regulators worldwide, think UK, EU, US, Singapore, they're all starting to sing from the same hymn sheet. Second, your investors. They're not just looking at growth anymore. They're putting ESG and compliance under a microscope during due diligence. And maybe the biggest one, AI. All those automated decisions your platform is making, someone has to be accountable for them, and regulators are looking straight at the board.
So all this pressure, it shines a massive spotlight on what we're calling the governance gap. This is really the heart of the problem we need to get our heads around.
So what is the governance gap? Well, think of it like this. On one side, you have your technology making thousands of decisions a minute, approving loans, flagging transactions, you name it. On the other side, you need a specific human, a name on an org chart, who owns the outcome of that decision. The space between the tech's action and that person's accountability, that's the gap. And let me tell you, the wider that gap gets, the more danger you're in. This really highlights a massive shift in how regulators see the world. You know, it used to be that fintechs were seen as financial services delivered through technology. Kind of cute, right? Not anymore. Now they look at you and they don't see the product. They see the risk you carry. You're not a tech company anymore. You're a financial institution, period. So where does this gap actually pop up in the real world? Well, it's in the messy questions. Like, who's on the hook when your lending algorithm shows bias? Or are you holding that third-party data processor to the exact same standard as your own team? And does the person in charge of data governance actually have a clear, documented path to the board? Or are they buried 5 layers down in the org chart? All right, let's make this a little more personal. Time for a quick checkup. Think of the next few questions as a little diagnostic test you can run in your head, or even better, bring to your very next board meeting. And be honest with yourself. Question number 1. Let's say I walk into your boardroom right now. Can the board, without fumbling through papers or looking at each other, name the single person who is accountable for every single AI-driven decision your platform makes? Instantly, no hesitation. Okay, next up, your vendors. Your whole operation relies on third-party partners, right? So does your risk committee put those vendors under the exact same microscope that they use for your internal teams? Or is there a different, maybe slightly easier set of rules for them?
And what about communication? Let's say an engineer finds a critical flaw in your system's logic. Is there a clear, documented, step-by-step path for that information to travel all the way up to the board? Not just an informal, oh, I'll tell my boss, but a real, written-down process.
And finally, let's look outward. Your company is global, or at least multi-jurisdictional. So, have you actually sat down and mapped your government structure against these specific, nitty-gritty regulatory expectations in every single place you operate? Because what works in London might not fly in Singapore. Look, let's be blunt. If the answer to any of those questions was, I'm not sure, or I don't think so, or just a flat no, then the gap is there. It's not a hypothetical. It's a real, tangible problem sitting in your company right now. Okay, enough doom and gloom. We've identified the problem. Now let's switch gears and talk about the solution. How do we build what I like to call bulletproof accountability? These are the actual structures that are going to protect your license to operate. The smartest fintechs out there are building their defense on 4 essential pillars. 1, they have dedicated tech and risk subcommittees at the board level. 2, they do what's called clear accountability mapping. We'll get to that.
3, they have a structured process for regulatory intelligence, so they're never caught off guard. And 4, they're not hiding their governance. They're actually disclosing it to investors as a strength.
So that term accountability mapping might sound complicated, but it's really not. This is basically what it looks like. For every major automated decision, like KYC, lending, fraud, you write down who the owner is by name and title and what the official escalation path is. It's dead simple, it's crystal clear, and it's exactly the kind of thing that makes a regulator nod and say, okay, they get it.
And here's a little insider tip on what regulators actually care about. They're not looking for some impossible standard of perfection. What they want to see is, 1, that your governance was designed on purpose, not just patched together after something went wrong. 2, that your board is truly engaged and understands this stuff, not just ticking a box. And 3, that you have a culture that is always looking to get better. All right, let's land this plane. We've talked about the problem, we've talked about the solution. Now here is a concrete, no-fluff action plan you can literally start on Monday morning to get this gap closed within the next 90 days. Here we go. Weeks 1 and 2, launch a formal governance gap assessment. Find out where you stand. Weeks 3 and 4, take a hard look at your board committees and assign clear accountability owners. Month 2 is all about documenting that accountability map for every automated system. And in month 3, you bake regulatory horizon scanning right into your regular board reporting. It's definitely a sprint, I won't lie, but it is totally doable.
You know, at the end of the day, this is about so much more than just compliance or avoiding a slap on the wrist. Getting your governance right is about building a rock-solid foundation. It's what lets you grow with confidence, and it's what gives investors the peace of mind to write those big checks. So I'll just leave you with this one last question to think about. The governance structure you have today, it was probably built for the company you were a few years ago. Is it truly ready for the powerful, regulated financial institution that you're becoming? Something to think about.